Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another Pastors Training Pastors presented to you by the Pastor Secretary. I'm Mishka, and tonight we have with us Lady Stroman, and she'll be talking about church accounting. So I'll bring her on so she can further introduce herself and share from her topic. Good evening, Lady Stroman.
Good evening.
How are you, ma'am?
Doing good. Hope you're well.
All is well. Okay, it's on you.
Thank you so much. First, just want to thank Mishka and the pastor secretary for this opportunity to use my gifts. Just want to touch church accounting really quickly this evening tonight. But before we get started, I want to pray before, and then we'll go into our topic. Father God, thank you for this time that we have tonight as we help pastors equip themselves with the tools that they need to succeed in their churches and with their churches. Father God, help anyone that comes across watching this evening and help me as I prepare these pastors. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, just want to get started just to let everybody know who I am and what I do. I am Talya Simpson Stroman, Lady Talya Simpson Stroman of the Victory Temple Cathedral Church. I am also a accountant. I've been doing accounting for roughly about 25 years. I've been doing church accounting roughly about 15, 16 years. I have a bachelor's in accounting from Sam Houston State University, and I have my master's in accounting from the University of Phoenix. I've worked with several churches, including my church when I grew up in Palestine, my home church, and then now the church that I currently serve with my husband. So I have IRS training also in the nonprofit arena, IRS training in the church arena, and also QuickBooks training. So hopefully tonight I can utilize all of that knowledge to kind of help you guys, and to help pastors and preachers that are starting their ministries understand the importance of having church accounting. So that's where we're going to start tonight. What is church accounting? So, any type of nonprofit organization, churches, ministries, any type of foundations, they all need to have some sort of accounting ledgers, fund accounting ledgers. They have to be able to organize, record, plan the finances of the church or of their ministries. They have to be able to be accountable because churches do not function for profit. Accountability is more important than profitability because you have to account for all of the monies, all of the grants, all of the donations that come through your church or through your nonprofit organization or your foundation. Tonight, we're going to strictly lean in on churches, but those preachers that, as along with your church, you have ministries, this will also help you to be able to learn the importance of needing sound accounting and sound documents. Okay. So, again, church accounting defined organization, recording, and planning of finances for churches. It's going to prioritize accountability versus profitability. You're going to have to account for different sources of revenue that are going to advance the church's mission. So that's going to be gifts and tithing. That's going to be capital campaigns, donations, grant, investments, pledges. All of these things are going to be revenue generating for your church. Okay? We know what the Bible says about tithing. So we know we have to be good stewards over that. Not only do we have to be good stewards over tithing, we have to be good stewards over any of the money that God entrusts us with, right? So, as pastors, there is an importance for you guys. You might not be involved in the nitty gritty details, each money taking in, things like that, but it is very important that you know what's coming in and what's going out. I do not like for my pastors to get into situations where they're blindsided, not knowing why they can't make payroll or if they can make payroll, those types of things. Not being able to budget for capital expenses that they need, not being able to save. That's a big thing that we do not think about as far as churches. Just as in your personal life, how you have to save and have emergency funds. One thing that COVID taught us is that we need to be good stewards. We need to be saving. Okay. So we have to be great accountability, have great accountability over all of these things. We have to be able to cross our eyes, cross our T's, dot our I's, and make sure that we know all the money coming in and all the money going out, and we can account for every penny. We'll be talking about why that's important in the next couple of slides, but this is the definition of church accounting. Simple and plain. We have to organize, we have to record, and we have to plan. All of those creates a successful church accounting system. So, how does this help? The main reason why church accounting is important is churches can access their financial position at all times without leaning on their bank accounts. If you have an effective church accounting system, you can run financial position reports at any time. You can run contribution reports at any time. You can, when your banks request these types of documents, you will already have these available and you won't have to try to create things or go into your bank account. The main thing that church accounting does is have you not relying on your bank statements. Okay. There are certain things that your financial position will give you. It'll give you leverage as far as banking. It'll show the banks that you are very much concerned about your organization and concerned about the growth and the vitality of your organization. So that is very important. It also helps churches be financially responsible and transparent. We have all heard these stories where everybody is spending the money. Pastor has no clue what has happened. He gets back to the back. Somebody is back there stealing the money, or it's unaccounted for. Can't No one can tell them where it's gone. So church accounting builds financial responsibility and transparency. At any given time, you should be able to run a financial position report, run a statement and activities report, and provide that to the pastors so that they can know how sound their church is. Also, it is IRS best practice to have some sort of church accounting system. This is going to protect your 501c3 status. It's very important. We're going to get into that in the next couple of slides about accounting is one thing that this protects. Okay. You have to have vital accounting systems to be able to protect your 501c status. There's a lot of things that can jeopardize this. And spending money where you shouldn't be spending money, misappropriating funds, those things like that can jeopardize this. And once this is gone, it's going to be very hard for you to get that back. So, church accounting protects that status, and that's very important. So, why is church accounting important for pastors? There are two groups of pastors, and you can kind of put pastors that are watching, you can kind of put yourself in either one of these because you're going to know how your makeup of your church is. First is pastor established led churches. That means that you established your church, you founded your church, you are the director, the CEO, the everybody of your church because you founded it. Okay? It is not a sorry, I have these switched. It is not a a bylaw and congregational governed church, because you founded your church, you're solely responsible and you act on behalf of your church. Okay. If it is a congregational governed church, that means it is ran by bylaws. That means it is ran by the congregation. The congregation gets a vote. Okay. So, in these two different scenarios, if your church is pastor founded, pastor led, most times your name, your your individual responsibility will be on the church. Okay. And that means that if anything happens IRS wise, they are going to come directly to you as the founder or the director. So in the formation of your church, you put several layers in there also, to protect yourself from that. But you have CFOs, you have CEOs, you have COOs, all of those types of people that come together and run the different branches of your church if you are pastor led, pastor founded. If you are congregationally led or bylaw driven, you might be a little bit more led by the deacon board, you might be more led by a trustee board, things like that. As a pastor, you still need to have your eyes on the church accounting. It may not be as vital if you are a pastor founded church or pastor led church. May not be as vital, but you still need to have visibility of the financials. One thing that happens in the two different scenarios, pastor led versus congregational bylaw led, pastor led has more financial holdings into the church. He probably put a little bit more of his finances in, right? And he also drafted and created the way that the bylaws are read. If you are congregational led, bylaw led, you might not necessarily, as the pastor, had anything to do with the drafting of the bylaws and the congregation. So, as far as church accounting, pastor led, you have the ability to guide and to notate and to detail what goes into your accounting, how it's set up, what you need, and what you need to report. If you are congregational, by law led, that means that it's already in there. So you as the pastor are coming into an already established church. So you first need to understand how they are going to let you get visibility on the financials. Okay. Um, some churches that I've worked with, some of the pastors are not even involved in the financial. And if something goes awry, it's not on the pastor because he's not involved and he does not know. They're either ran by a trustee board, they're either ran by a deacon board. But as a pastor, you still need to fight for the ability to have some sort of visibility, some sort of understanding of what is coming in from the congregation and what is being spent. You need to have some sort of budget. You need to have some sort of plan on the activities that you want to do, how those going to be funded. That's if your church is congregational or bylaw led. They need to give you some sort of instruction and you need to be able to have that instruction. Okay. And there needs to be a medium meeting point as what you are allowed to spend and have as a pastor. Okay. Um, the congregational by-led churches are very, very strict and stringent on sometimes giving the pastor access to that information. So when you're coming into situations like this, pastors, you need to make sure that that is upfront. I need to be able to know what's going on with the church's financial position. I need to be able to know how I will be able to spend money. And a lot of you pastors are saying, I'm the pastor. I shouldn't have to ask those questions. But if you're coming into a bylaw congregational led church, sometimes those bylaws have statutes and have wordings in them that don't allow the pastor to get involved. So you need to have your eye on the prize as far as what you're getting into when you are coming into these bylaw congregational led churches. Okay. In the situations where the pastors have been there for years, pastor gets ill, the pastor gets sick, something happens, he passes away, you get voted in as a new pastor into this congregational or bylaw led church. That needs to be immediate place that you go to the bylaws, read them, understand them, know what you can and cannot do financially, what they will and will not tell you financially. If you are pastor led, if you're the founder of your church, when you established your church, you drafted your own bylaws. You are the end and the beginning, the alpha and the omega of your church. So you have no problem getting the details, knowing where you are financially, budgeting, planning, spending. All of that is driven by you because you are the founder. You are the house of that church. Now, you put people in place like CFOs, chief financial officers, chief operating officers, chief executive officers that also are have your best interest in heart, and they will act on your behalf under your vision. So they still need to report certain things to you, and that's why church accounting for the pastors is very important. Okay. So where do we get started? I'm going to step back. First, you need to have your 501c3 status. This usually comes from a determination letter from the IRS. This is your initial start to make sure that you have. Now, some churches have functioned for a very long time without their 501c3 status. This means that if you have this, this means that you're tax exempt. You don't have to pay any income taxes to the IRS, and then you also get certain benefits. You don't have to pay taxes on taxable items. You are exempt from hotel occupancy tax. If this was done appropriately, you have all of those exemptions. Okay. Um, if you, as a church, you're a pastor of a church that does not have this, this is going to be very beneficial because you cannot get grants, you cannot get certain in-kind donations from, you cannot have companies to match donations if you do not have this 501c3 status. If you are starting ministry and you're starting a foundation, you need to have this because you're going to need some sort of backing for your ministry or for your foundation. Okay. 501c3 status makes that easy for you to get these grants, for you to get this funding. There are so many avenues of ways that you can get funding, but you have to have that. That's the very first start. Need to have some sort of bylaws, formal formation documents. If you have your 501c3 status, that was required when you completed that. So you should be good here. If you are pastoring a bylaw led, congregational led church, you need to make sure that these bylaws are updated every 2 to 3 years. Things um, get outdated. As technology grows, so does the accounting world. It grows, things change, rules change. So your bylaws need to change with the rules and the effectiveness of the IRS, because there are some things that used to happen in the 80s when some of these older churches were established, and some of these churches that have been there for hundreds of years, some of those things can be outdated. So you need to make sure that your bylaws are updated, they're current, they reflect the newest rules and regulations, not just in the accounting world, but in everything that is going on. Um, COVID was a big thing where sometimes some people took the initiative to update their bylaws to incorporate the COVID guidelines that happened. There were some major changes over the past 4 years as the the IRS is concerned, what pastors were allotted to write off, the housing allowances, things like that. Some of those things have changed. So when IRS rules, when governments change, and especially with our governor here in Texas, um, things change. So you need to make sure that your bylaws are reflecting that. You don't want to have bylaws if you're in a congregational or bylaw led church, if you're pastoring one of those types of churches. You don't want your bylaws to be so archaic that you are quenched as the pastor and you can't do anything because you are following archaic bylaws. Okay? Bank accounts, very important. You will need restricted bank accounts and you will need unrestricted bank accounts. The difference here is if the bank account is restricted, that money usually has come from a grant or it has a specific purpose, missions, benevolence, a scholarship, things like that. Those are restricted accounts that can only be used for the sole purpose of that account. Okay? Grant money can only be used for the sole purpose of that grant. If your church was ever to get audited, you as the pastor will be pulled into the audit because you were mentioned probably in the audit as the pastor. This is another reason why you should be visible to the church accounting and the things that are going on behind the scenes. If you were ever to get audited, the first place that they're going to go is in your bank accounts, and they are going to review transactions that don't look churchy. Okay, so your restricted accounts should only be restricted to the funds that were it was generated. So if it's a scholarship restricted account, that means you should only be paying universities, you should only be paying any type of educational institution. If it's a scholarship for younger kids, how they are going to charter schools and things like that, those checks that are coming out of that account need to go strictly to that educational institution. If it's benevolence, you should be paying light bills, rent, you should be paying those directly to the companies, the landlords, those types of things. Okay, this is what the IRS is looking for. If you were ever to get audited, they're going to be pulling your canceled check copies, seeing where you're writing checks. We're going to get into the credit card expenses, debit card expenses a little later on, but that's what a restricted account is. Unrestricted accounts means that the church has the ability, the pastor has the ability to use that money where they see fit. Okay. Now, I use those words where they see fit a little loosely because we are still dealing with church funds. And as pastors, you need to be a little bit careful of how you are being the steward over the church's monies, especially if you are a pastor led church. Okay. Also, the last couple of things that you need to get started with your church accounting: insurance, bonding, and credit cards. Okay. For insurance, you need to insure the officers of your church. They need to be insured and bonded. If they are notaries, most likely they are already insured and bonded through the state of Texas. But this protects them as an officer of your church. That is pastor led churches, that's bylaw constitution led churches. Okay? Because these people are doing the business of the church on the church's behalf. We don't want them to get personally attacked for something that happens at the church because their names are on the bank accounts. Okay? If they're trustees, if they're deacons, even if your name is on the bank account. Say, for instance, there's a slip and fall at the church, and the person that slipped and fell, he sues the church, they sue everybody in relation to the church. Bonding, insurance and bonding will help protect the pastor and those persons that are acting in financial positions on the church's behalf. Okay. And then credit cards. Credit cards is a very delicate topic because it can be abused. And if the credit cards get into the wrong hands, we all know what can kind of happen. So you want to be able to increase the buying power of your church by having credit cards. You also can utilize your money in different arenas by having credit cards. You always need to have some sort of stringent rules on using credit cards because we all know what will happen when credit cards get in the wrong hands. So you can have it to get started. I wouldn't lean too heavily on using credit cards for everyday transactions. But as a church, when you go out to do business, you are going to need some sort of credit leverage. If you're renting vans to go on a church trip, you're going to need to be able to have some sort of credit leverage to be able to do that. Um, any types of purchases, that you don't want to have a member personally liable for those charges. That's what credit cards will be used for in conjunction with the bank accounts. Okay. So you'll need all of these things on these bullet points to kind of get started with your church account. Once you have established your bank accounts, you've gotten going, if you are pastor founded and led, that is when you start preparing and having certain deliverables with your church account. If you are a congregational and bylaw led church, that means the church was pretty much already established. If you are a pastor coming into that type of congregation and that type of setup at the church, these are several things that they need to be providing you as the pastor in a congregational or a bylaw led church. You need to have some sort of statement of activities every month. They need to tell you where the money is going and how much money is coming in and what revenue sources are coming in. Your statement of financial position, your assets. If you have assets, if you're already established church, and your liabilities, what your debts are, what do you owe, okay? And you need to have budgets if you are a bylaw congregational led church, if you're a pastor coming into that. If you are a pastor founded your church, you need to have some sort of accounting team or outsource an accountant to be able to organize and provide you these things. Okay. If you are just getting started, you might not always have the funds to be able to employ somebody to be able to do this. Okay. So you're going to have to lean a little bit more on your bank accounts to get these types of information. But as you grow and you start putting people in place like your chief financial officer should be able to prepare these types of reports for you. Okay. Um, we're going to talk about a little bit, not the next slide, but the slide after next, about in-house people as far as accounting or outsourced people. But these would be all of your deliverables that you would need to have every month. You would need to have sight of every month from a church accounting type system. Okay. Statement of activities, your revenues. These are going to be your tithes and your offerings. These are going to be any monies that are coming in from your ministries. These are going to be any one-time donations, any in-kind donations that are coming in. You should have different levels of statement activities. If you have a general fund, unrestricted bank account for your general operations, this is going to have your tithes and offerings. This is going to have your monthly expenses, your mortgage, your rents, your utilities, you're paying your payroll, all those types of people. That is going to be in your statement of activities. You will not have you will not have a need as much for your statement activities on a monthly basis for those restricted accounts, with the exception of benevolence, because you should be paying out benevolence depending on your church's standards for benevolence. You should be paying those out weekly or monthly, depending on if you do some sort of program to where they come on the first Saturday with their bills and you take so many people in. That would cause you to have a statement of activity on a monthly basis for your benevolent account. But the statement of activities usually generally is for your general operating fund and for any of your benevolence activities. You can also report missions if you have mission work that goes on a monthly basis. As a pastor, you need to know what monies are coming in monthly, even sometimes weekly. If you have an established church now, as a pastor, you founded it, but you have an established church now, you have a staff, y'all have monthly staff meetings, your financial person in that staff meeting should be able to present this to you. Okay? Surpluses and deficits. I'm going to break this down. You're in the red or you're not in the red. You're in the green. Okay? Surplus is in the green. Green means we have money left over. Deficit is red. That means that we did not cover what we brought. We didn't cover what we sent out. Okay? So if we are preparing a statement of activities on a monthly basis, we're going to have our revenues. Okay? Our tithes and offerings, everything that's coming into our church from the outside. Okay? We're going to have all of our expenses. If our revenues are more than our expenses, we're going to be in a surplus. If our expenses are more than our revenues, we're going to be in a deficit. And deficits are where we need to stay away from. Okay? Just like in your personal life, if you don't have no money to spend, you can't buy groceries, you can't do those types of things, right? So that's where planning and these budgets come in, to where we stay away from deficits. Okay? Deficits are bad. For our statements of financial position, those will not usually be prepared on a monthly basis. Those usually be prepared on an annual basis. However, if you have an operating fund and you know you have mortgage, that's going to be an ongoing debt or ongoing liability that you have. So you already know that you have that as the pastor. So you technically don't have to be reminded every month that you have that, because it's going to be here in your expenses because you're going to be paying it every month. Okay. So statements of financial position can be prepared on a semi-annual basis, like every 6 months. They can be prepared yearly. They need to be prepared yearly. Um, if you're keeping up with your statement of activities, you are paying down your liabilities. If you acquire new equipment, new sound system, drums, if you acquire a church band, if you acquire a new building, okay, that is going to trigger a new statement of financial position to be prepared. You need these when you are going to the bank also to be able to do those types of acquisitions. Okay. So you might not have, as a pastor, you might not have this presented to you every month. But if you guys are planning, you're down here in your budget phase and you're planning, you know you're going to have some capital um, acquisitions coming up. You know you want to purchase some land. You know you want to, your sound system is going out. You're going to need a new sound system. You then will go to your accounting department or your chief financial officer or your accountant, and you have them prepare this to present to the bank so that they can see what your financial position as a church is. If you are renting, you're leasing a building. As a pastor, your church is in a some sort of leased facility. You may not have many assets. Your liability won't be a financial position liability. That liability will be in straight expense because you are using your cash to pay your rent. Okay, it's nothing that you own. So down here in your statements of financial position, these things are going to be something that you have taken possession of, and you either still owe on it or it's fully paid off and it is your property as the church or the pastor. Okay. Another deliverable after you have prepared your statement of activities is your budget. Okay. You have two different types of budgets that can be prepared. The main budgets that churches usually do are annually. And depending on what your church's calendar or fiscal year is, if they go from January to December, you probably need to start around October budgeting for your upcoming year. Your budgets need to go along with your ministry, okay? And your church's mission, okay? So if you have mission work that you know you're going to want to do in 2024, 2025, and you are going to start needing to build funds for that, you need to create that and put that in the budget. If these funds are going to be restricted, you need to do a restricted budget that encompasses all the expenses that you would need for that mission trip. Okay. Then you go out and you start doing capital campaigns, pledges, and things like that to cover that budget. So, how do you budget? First thing you're going to do is you're going to look at your statement of activities for the year. You're definitely going to budget the recurring things, rent, utilities, things like that. Everything that you're going to need on a monthly basis, all of your payroll, you budget all of those in. If you are a pastor led church and you are getting a salary, you go into the payroll. Your pastoral compensation package goes into this budget. Okay. You have also set the things that you are going to do for the church, or you are going to want the church, your vision for the church for the next year. Anything monetarily that's going to go into covering that vision that you have for your church in the upcoming year, that needs to go into your budget. So if you want to launch a capital campaign for a daycare, that's going to have to go into your budget. If you are going to want to do revivals, if you're going to want to do any sort of Christian education conferences, all those types of things, any type of annual event, your pastoral anniversary, the church anniversary, all those expenses related to bringing ministers in, their travel, the marketing, all of that stuff needs to go into the budget. Okay? These are the deliverables that a church accounting system needs to give you as a pastor. If you are a pastor led church, you need to get your eyes on these every month with no question, because you need to see what's driving your church. Okay? If you need to see when your revenues are going down, when your tithes and offering are going down. You need to understand the seasonality of your tithes and offerings. We all know people travel in the summer months. So sometimes in the summer months, offerings are going to be low. So your statement of activities as the months go by will show you the seasonality of your church. Sometimes you're going to teach a little more on tithes and offerings in certain times of the year. That's going to be in the fall where your big holidays are coming. Okay. You might have to teach a little bit more on tithing because people are going to be out utilizing their funds in different ways. Black Friday shopping, Christmas shopping, back to school shopping, things like that. Your statement of activities, when you are reviewing your revenues, will show you those seasonalities in those months where your tithes and offerings are going to be a little lower. Okay. Then you'll have to adjust sometimes your mission, and maybe you'll have to adjust some of the activities that you planned because you are seeing where your seasonality is in the money that's coming in. That's why it's very important as a pastor for you to review these financial documents, okay, that a church accounting system will prepare you. If you are a bylaw congregational led church, if you're a pastor in one of those churches, you might have several layers into your budgeting process, into you reviewing your statement of activities and your statement of financial position. Make sure that you get some sort of visibility on this if you don't have full access to those things. Because you, as the pastor, again, do not want to be blindsided when your deacon is coming to you saying, we can't make payroll today. If you're not reviewing these reports, the deacons shouldn't be coming to you with those types of questions because you're not going to know. If you're not reviewing these reports, you don't have no answer. You're not going to be able to answer the deacon, right? So, in the bylaw constitutional led churches, you as the pastor coming into that type of church or inheriting that type of church or being installed in that type of church, you have to understand what the church the visibility that they're going to give you. Okay. Now, what do we do with the information as a pastor that a church accounting system can provide you? First thing that you as the pastor can do is make sure that your pastoral compensation package is in effect and is being taken care of. Okay. Your salary, your benefits, your retirement, your housing allowances, your monthly expenses allowances. Those are things as a pastor that you can fight for when you have visibility on the church's statements of activities, their financial position, because you know your worth and you're seeing that the church can afford your worth. So you need to make sure as the pastor that you are taken care of. Now, don't misconstrue my words as me saying, you see what's coming in, so they can pay me this and that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you're getting visibility to how your church is performing so that you, as the pastor and the shepherd of the church, can be taken care of in the manner that you are worth. So, your salary, if you accepted the position, you accepted the salary that the church will be able to provide for you. If you are getting a salary, because let's be honest, there are some pastors out there that are foregoing their salary for other benefits because the church is just starting out. The church is viewing the statement of activities. The church is not in a good financial position to be able to accommodate this. The pastor might be bivocational. He might have a day job or he might have a full-time job. So he does not accept a salary from the church, but he accepts other benefits and other ways of compensation. Okay. Benefits is very important. As the pastor, back in the day, pastors were taken care of as far as anything that the pastor needed, the church would just cover it. We are shifting and we are in a new day and age to where churches should be paying for their pastors' health benefits. They should be giving them some sort of retirement benefit. Okay. Most pastors now they're going to preach until they feel like they have preached. That might be 65 for some pastors. That might be 70. That might be 75 for some pastors. And then they want to sit back. They want to be preached to. That's where this retirement plan comes into play. Monthly expense allotments. As the pastor of the church, having visibility of the statement of activities, you as a pastor also need to have a fund for you to be able to go out and do ministry work. If you're counseling, if you're making hospital visits, you necessarily should not be coming out of your pocket for those types of things. The church should be able to give you some sort of expense allotment, whether that's $250 a month or if that's $250 a week. But they should be able to give you some sort of allotment to be able to go and do those things. Taking your leaders out and giving them knowledge, leadership conferences, all those types of things should be in some sort of monthly expense allotment. When you have visibility to the statement of activities for your church, you'll be able to understand where you can have these types of expense allotments. Um, if there are restricted funds specifically for that, restricted specifically for the pastor to go out and do his mission work, to go out and do his hospital visits, all of those types of things, that would be in the statement of activities or your statement of financial position. Mm-hmm. Using your accounting information correctly as the pastor also will let you determine if you need a staff or if you will be able to continue with volunteers. This is a very sensitive topic to me because I was a church volunteer for 15 years, 15, 20 years. My church functioned off of volunteers. And that was the way to be able to do your ministry work, provide your time, your talent, and your treasures to the Lord and not be compensated. Now, in the day and age that we live in, this is almost impossible to find these days. Everybody wants to be staff. Okay? So, using your accounting information, using your statement of activities, that will help you be able to determine if you can afford staff or if you have to act in this realm. What this means, though, you can't govern a volunteer because they are volunteer. So they're going to, if they are dedicated, they're going to do their job, they do their position well. But you can always govern staff. Texas is an at-will state. If they do not perform, you have the ability to fire them at will. The necessity for staff is very important for your church offices, for your people that are in your finance team. If you can still, in 2023, function on a volunteer capacity, kudos to you, because this is where your emergency funds will get built because you're not having to pay staff. Okay? Investments, major purchases. Using your church accounting information will help you know when you can do this, how you can invest in making major purchases. And it also will give you transparency. At any given time, you should be able to go to your church staff and or have a meeting with your church staff, and they should be able, using the church accounting information, to give you as the pastor anything that you need as far as information is concerned. If you want to know what the tithes were in a particular fund, you want to know how many scholarships that we can give out this year, church accounting information will be able to give you that visibility and that transparency. As I start wrapping up, one of the questions that I'm always asked by pastors is, should I have in-house staff or in-house volunteers, or should I outsource? It's all going to depend on your church's statement of activities, how well your revenues are coming in, and how minimal your expenses are going out, to know if you can afford in-house staff. Absolutely, most large churches have in-house staff. They need someone there 8 to 5 to be able to field questions. They might have daycares, they might have schools on their campuses. So, yes, they have the ability to have in house staff. They have a functioning church office, and they have the ability to have someone on staff, like an accountant, that can understand the church's activities and their specific needs. But no, this is going to be a little bit more expensive. Okay. Most smaller churches are going to outsource. Um, it provides a different, level of expertise, right? You can go directly to an accountant or go directly to a bookkeeper and say, hey, here are my books for the whole entire year, and I need you to give me a statement of activities and give me a statement of financial position. Or in January, you can go to an accountant or a bookkeeper and say, here is my books for the entire year. I need you to prepare my 1099s. So, as a church, depending on if you are in staffing or if you are outsourcing, you are going to prepare some form of 1099, or you are going to have some payroll. Okay. If you have in house staff, you definitely will need an accountant. You'll need some sort of office manager that can do payroll. You might need an HR staff. You might have one office manager that does all of that. You utilize your deacon board to bring in the monies, count the monies, deposit the monies. You can have one person on the staff checking those deposits. Okay. That might be the extent of your in house staff. Then you might also have an outsourced person that comes in and audits what the in-house office manager or what the deacon board is depositing into your accounts. That is a way that you can kind of get the best of both worlds. So you have an office person, somebody that's at the church all day long, somebody that's fielding questions, answering the phones. That's in-house staff. You don't have to be a large church to have that type of in-house staff. You can utilize your deacon board, your trustee boards to do the counts from the weekly services, to do the deposits, things like that. And then you can outsource someone, an accountant or a bookkeeper, to come in at the end of the month and prepare your statement of activities or prepare your statement of financial position, do your 1099s, all of those types of things. So it kind of depends on your needs. It's going to depend on your revenues and your income streams. Now, if you're getting into where you're a church, you have an operating fund, you have several restricted funds, scholarship, benevolence, missions, those things like that, that might get a little bit too overwhelming for your office manager or your person that runs your payroll. So you might have to have someone, an accountant, on outsource on a monthly basis, and you pay them a monthly fee. That might be the extent of your outsourcing. The difference between the two also, this person should be a W 2 employee. This person should be a contract. The reason why I say that, when you're talking about employee versus a contractor or independent contractor. You can govern what this person does. You can request what this person does, and they have to fulfill your request based on contractual obligations. Okay? But you can't govern their every daily move like you can this person. So, whether you need in house or whether you need outsourcing is going to depend on your church accounting system. Okay? How do you get to your church accounting system if you are a pastor led church and you are just trying to get up off of your feet? This is how you get there, by outsourcing a bookkeeper or an accountant. If you are an already established church and you just became the pastor and you walked in and they don't have any of this, this is how you're going to get to here, to your church accounting system. You have to start with, at the beginning of the presentation, all of those things that you need to start with. You have to have some starting point if you're a pastor and you're coming into a situation where they do not have anything at all. You start here and you build to in house staff. Okay? If you are in a position to where you can't afford an outsourced person, then you look for a bookkeeper that you can pay by the hour to come in and do little things. Or you do trainings on some of the, I'm going to give you a couple of websites here that have church softwares that they do trainings. You get you one person, sound person, that you can train and send them off to get some training to build up to where you need to get to a starting point. And then you can go to an outsourced person once your revenues free up to where you can do that. Okay? So, some of the accounting softwares, I did get a couple of questions about accounting softwares to use. QuickBooks is going to be very user friendly. None of these are going to be free. Okay, so if we're talking about a free system, you're going to have to start with Excel. You're going to have to start in some Microsoft money, some base product like that, to where it would not be as expensive as these would be. But these are some of your popular church accounting softwares. They all do payroll. They all prepare statements of activities, statements of financial positions. They give you contribution modules to where you can record your contributions that are coming in. You can record all of your monies that are coming in, your one-time donations, your grants. They can also track all of your expenses going out. Okay. Beginning users, I would go to a non-profit QuickBooks system. I would go to an A+ system, and Sage. These Church Pro, Church Track, Power Church are going to be for some of your larger churches, roughly like 100 to 150 members and up. Power Church goes all the way to roughly a billion users. If you have, several satellite campuses and you all are under a house under one accounting system. So Power Church is going to be your most powerful tool that you can use. It has marketing systems inside of it, email capability to your members, things like that. Um, Not saying you as a small church can't use Power Church, but it is very expensive. I put them kind of in an order of monetary. So QuickBooks would be like your least expensive option, and Power Church would be one of your more expensive options. So your main goals is to protect the church. We have to protect you as the pastor, and we have to protect the congregation. So I hope I have been able to help you pastors understand the need for church accounting, what church accounting can do for you. And I just appreciate Mishka for the opportunity for letting me present to you guys today.
You're welcome. If you have time, somebody ask a question and they have insurance, they feel like they have good insurance, but could you talk a little bit more about bonding?
For the bonding, I'll give you guys a simple example. If you are a notary and you are notarizing documents, wills, all sorts of documents, divorce proceedings, contracts, things like that. If something goes awry in the contract that you notarized, you could be liable for the fallout, the financial fallout of the breach of contract, or if something was in that contract that was not factual. Okay. Or if there are people that were not in your presence that signed the contract at the time that you notarized it, that would make you personally liable. So, what bonding does is it protects you as the notary if that were to happen. They wouldn't personally come after you. And there are levels of bonding as well. You can be covered up to $5,000. You can be covered up to $1,000,000. They cannot personally attack your personal assets, your personal bank accounts, your personal properties, anything that is attached to you if you are bonded. It gives you kind of that assurance um, that you would be protected. And the reason why it's important for churches, for people in the church to have, is a lot of times, I'll just speak for myself. I did church accounting for one particular church for 15 years. My names were on the bank accounts. Um, my name was on other financial instruments. And if anything had happened at the church, or if they were to get audited by the IRS, those people that were on that bank account, they would come to first, because the church that I worked for was a by law congregational led church. Pastor's name wasn't on any of the bank accounts. Pastor couldn't sign a check because there were other people in place that did that. There were other people that were on the bank accounts. And I wasn't bonded. So if anything had happened in those 15 years when I was working there, I could have been attacked personally. My assets, anything that I had could have been attacked personally because of where my name was in relation to some of those bank accounts and to some of those financial instruments. So that's what bonding does. It protects you personally. Hope that helps.
It does. And so let me just make sure before I say the wrong information. You do serve churches outside of Houston, Texas. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And so they will simply send you an email with whatever questions that they had or
Yes.
have. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So I'm going to put your email address back up there. And if you all have questions after that, you can certainly reach out to her and she'll be glad to ask. So I certainly appreciate you. Everybody said how great the information was. It was clear. I learned some things and so did everybody else. So thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night, everybody.
Right.